Hey folks, it's Abby and today I'm going to be going through the books that I managed to read in April. So for the past 3 months of 2022 I had actually been doing balancing the books, where I had to make sure that my books balanced out for what I brought in and what I managed to read off of my TBR each month. At the beginning of last month my mother-in-law passed away, so I immediately disbanded that for this month. So I had already said that it wasn't going to count in October and it wasn't going to count in December because of my birthday and Christmas. It is also not counting in this month. I wasn't reading as much because I wanted obviously to be there to support my partner, and I was grieving, and also some of my amazing lovely friends sent me books, as well as sending my partner a few bits and pieces as well, which I really appreciate. I forever appreciate those. So yes, that's not happening this month, but I still wanted to go over the books that I did read. Obviously this is a little bit into May. This is me getting back on track now. So let's delve into everything. The first thing I'm going to say is I read a book that I'm not going to mention. It was on my TBR, but it doesn't count against the number on my TBR because I kind of forgot about it. I just found it when I was searching through the shelves, so I wanted to read it and get out of the way. The reason I'm mentioning it is that it's 287 pages and I am including it in my page count. That's the only time that's getting mentioned. Now on to the books that I read. I have my bullet journal in here. So the first book I finished was the Skulduggery Pleasant Grimoire by Derek Landy. This is a summary of every single book in the series up until just before the last one, and it also has its own individual storyline running through it. I get annoyed by some of the mistakes in here, but at the same time I adore this book. Like, I love the way that we get the kind of mature version of the characters looking back at their childhood exploits, and the story that runs through it is fantastic. And I also use this within the All the World's a Page readathon, Olivia Catastrophe's readathon, and this was the prompt for an author whose writing style I enjoy. We know I love Skulduggery Pleasant. So yes, this was a reread for me. I gave it 4 stars. Then next up, surprising no one, Until the End by Derek Landy. This is the 15th book in the Skulduggery Pleasant series, the last one in season 2. I read this all in one day. My Waterstones for some reason broke the embargo for my pre-order, so I got it on the 13th when it was supposed to come out on the 14th, and I read it on the 13th all in one day. I really enjoyed this. I did have my issues with it. I think that when I do eventually reread it, I think it'll come down to a 4-star. At the moment it's riding on the high of a 5 just because of what it is, but I did think that some things were a little bit too convenient and some plot points and characters weren't explained in depth enough for us to care about them. So it's still so good, and I got this personalised and signed in Manchester. It's the first thing I've done since the pandemic, like going anywhere. I went to Manchester by myself and I got it signed and it was amazing. And that one is for 2 different prompts for All the World's a Page. One is a book that is, oh no, 3 different prompts, sorry. So one is a book that is hyped. For me, this is very hyped. 2, a book that'll stab me in the feels. I was anticipating that this was going to. It didn't. That was part of my problem. And then the third one is a slash in and of itself, and that's either a long book or a 5-star prediction. This is 647 pages, and I predicted it would be a 5-star read, and emotionally it is. So this counted for a lot of prompts. Then a book that Carrie from Caring for Books gifted me a little while ago, earlier on this year, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. That's Beowulf, a translation by Maria Davana Headley, or Headley. And this one was for the prompt of a short book, because it is. This is an Old English epic poem that has had a first major female feminist translation. I loved this so much. It was so modern and I really didn't expect it, like bro and like swear words, and it made it really fun and really readable, and it really made you understand kind of how people were experiencing at the time, because this is Davana Headley's interpretation of kind of how the people would have reacted to the language in this time. She's tried to write it in the same thing for us nowadays, and I think it was just done amazingly well. I really enjoyed it. I totally see why this lasted for thousands of years. It's such a campfire story. It's actually really good. I really enjoyed it. Then one that doesn't fulfill any prompts because I picked it up secondhand and just read it straight away, and that is From Ostia to Alexandria with Flavia Gemina by Caroline Lawrence. This is a companion book to the Roman Mystery series, which I've adored, and I'm trying to collect all these covers, and Caroline Lawrence has said herself that these are the rarest covers of the books, so pray for me. This is non-fiction, kind of following Lawrence a little bit as she goes around to different locations. So she goes to Italy, she goes to Greece, and she goes to Morocco and Egypt. My biggest issue with this is that she kept calling the working class people peasants. This is from a trip in what, like the mid-noughts, and she keeps calling them peasants. And that just felt really weird. The first place that she goes to is Italy, and I have spent a lot of time in the Napoli region of Italy. I've also spent some time on Sicily. And so she's calling these people peasants, and I have an image in my mind's eye of these people. And I'm like, they're not peasants, they're just working class people. I didn't like that. Separate from that, it was really interesting. I really enjoyed kind of seeing places I'd seen before and learning a bit more about places that I've never been to, and I'd love to use this as a travel guide and go around these places myself. She's also a historian on top of being an author, like an actual bona fide historian, so everything is completely historically accurate, and these are fantastic middle grade books. Then back on the TBR, but not for the All the World's a Page readathon, because this came from my TBR jar. The Book of Mirrors by Io Chirivici. This was lent to me by one of my best friends about 4, 5, 6 years ago, God even knows, and I finally read it. Very weird little book. It is essentially written from 3 different perspectives. Some dude writes the beginning of what looks like he's admitting to something in relation to a murder that happened years ago, but he is writing a manuscript and only sends part of it and passes away before he can send the rest. And so it's then the other 2 people trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Very interesting, very weird, very obviously written from a man's perspective. It was fine. 3 stars, I think. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not like my next hyped read, you know? Then for the All the World's a Page prompt of family focused and a potential happy ending, it kind of was and kind of wasn't, is a book that was gifted to me by Veronica, and that is The Brothers Lionheart by Astrid Lindgren. I say that wrong every time, I'm so sorry. She gave me this because I read some short stories from her, and really enjoyed them, and this is one of her absolute favourite stories, and I totally see why. 100% family focused. It's a gorgeous story about 2 brothers who pass away, one in an accident and one from a long-term illness, and they were always, the older one always told the younger one that when we die we'll meet in Nangiala and we'll have adventures there, kind of like a heaven sort of thing. And it's about the adventures there and about how life isn't perfect, and they go and they try and save the world, and the ending is a very bittersweet ending. I kind of thought it would be. It's both happy and sad. In terms of the worlds in here, it kind of had a Narnia-esque further up and further in vibe to it, which I really enjoyed. I liked kind of how that progressed. The writing is absolutely beautiful. Obviously I can't speak for Lindgren's writing in Swedish, but the translation is done beautifully. This is such a sweet children's classic, so beautiful, and I really do recommend picking this one up. It's so lovely. Thank you, Veronica, for gifting it to me. Then my non-fiction for the month, which fills the prompt of a black author, and that is Natives by Akala. This is all about, as it says in here, race and class in the ruins of empire. So Akala is half British, half Jamaican. I don't think that's quite accurate. He has at least one parent of Jamaican heritage, and then he's also got Scottish, or at least like a grandparent of Jamaican heritage, and then he's got one grandparent Scottish and one grandparent English. Not full. So yeah, essentially he is half British, half Jamaican, and then because of the fact that he feels separate from England, I think he leans a little bit more into his Scottishness. Don't blame him, I'm half Scottish. This was really, really interesting. I ended up Googling so much. I've had like 7 million books onto my TBR, because there's so much that I want to read from here. I was constantly researching the people that he's mentioning, because I've never been told about them. He mentions stuff that I knew about already, for example, Grenfell Tower, the Windrush, and he discusses them in more nuance. He also kind of gives examples from different parts of the world and how that all links in. It's just, I think it's really well done. I'm very glad I read it, and this was gifted to me by Caitlin from My Cheshire Rabbit, so thank you so much, I really enjoyed it. Then for the prompt to read an audiobook, I read Comfort Me with Apples. Can't remember the author's name for this one. This is a very weird little audiobook. It utilises the story of Adam and Eve and kind of makes, if you take it at face value, has a misogynistic story, but realistically when you're actually reading it and taking it in, it's intended as a feminist story, where this woman is purely there for her husband's pleasure. She's not supposed to do anything else. She's not supposed to do anything other than sit pretty and make dinner and look nice when he comes home. It's so interesting and it's so short as well. Like, it only took me an hour, 2 hours to listen to. Very fascinating. I heard about it from Kayla from Books and Allies channel. I think this is a fantastic little book and I'd love to have it on my shelves. The next book that I read was Gallant by V.E. Schwab. So this was the Illumicrate book last month, March. I'm getting all lost now. Absolutely stunning. A bit disappointing to read. I think I'm giving it 3.5 stars. Essentially, there's this girl, it was living in basically like an orphanage, and then she's like invited to a family home, and there's a good side, and then if she crosses over kind of like into a shadow realm, there's a dark side with loads of death. Fascinating concept. Hello, death. 100% here for it. And I really enjoy Schwab's modern day writing style. She has, you know, her older writing style and her newer writing style, and I really like that. But this felt like a prequel. You do not learn nearly enough about the characters to care about the ones who are put in danger, and to care about their lives. And just with the amount that you learn about the world as well, you also don't learn enough about that, so therefore it feels like it's a prequel. It feels like it is coming back to a world that you already know, and where it's just providing you little extra facts, so it doesn't need to go into detail because you already have detail from the main book. Which is a pity, because it's a gorgeous little story, but it's just missing out on so much depth to make you care. It should have been longer, or it should be a prequel to an overall story. If she writes anything else in this little world, I'll definitely pick it up because I really enjoyed this and I'd love to see more, but it just didn't really have any depth to it. And that was for the prompt of an expensive purchase, because Illumicrate is not cheap. Then next up, me and Olivia finally finished The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandria. This is a chunky 900-ish? How many pages is this? Just under 900, 894, so 900 page classic. Translated from French, written all about a man who is wrongfully imprisoned and then sets out to get his revenge. Wow. So the time when he's imprisoned, fascinating. The revenge, so interesting. I think me and Olivia are both giving this 4 stars. Obviously I can't talk about it in depth because it would take up the length of this video without everything else in it. We enjoyed it more than we enjoyed reading War and Peace together, and I'm looking forward to reading more from this author. I think it was just done so well. There are a lot of issues with it as well, unfortunately. The primary issue is there's a loving slave narrative, with a young female slave being part of that, with that stereotype storyline, and also a black slave, and there is hella racism in this. I hadn't seen anyone else mention this before me and Olivia dived into it. It's blatant racism, so please be aware of that when you go in. One of the slave characters is black, Nubian, I believe is how he is described, and is just treated worse than all the other slaves. But apart from that, the actual story is very well written. Very much enjoy it, and it's a big book, but it actually feels quite quick to read through. I know, like, we read it over 3 months. We read 1 chapter a day. You could get through this pretty quickly. It's really good. I'm running out of space. God damn it. Go down there. Then for the last book with a prompt for All the World's a Page is Book Jumper, which is a recommended read. So I'm stating that this was recommended to me because it was bought for me by Carrie, again from Caring for Books. This is translated from German, and the author is Mechtil Gläser, and this is about a young German girl who ends up moving back to a Scottish isle where her mum's from. She was raised completely in Germany, but her mum is Scottish, and they moved to this Scottish island because they're trying to get away from some tough events that have happened at home in Germany. And it turns out once they get there that her family has this magical ability to be able to jump inside of literature. They're kind of trained up to use this ability to look after the books, and it's only the young people who can do it. I think it's from like ages 5 to 25, and our protagonist is 16, 18, I think 16, and so when she gets there, it's like, okay, well, you're a Lennox, you need to jump into these books and look after them. But of course it doesn't quite go as smoothly as that, and a lot of things occur. Very similar concept to The Air Affair by Jasper Fforde and the whole Thursday Next series, but less of the ridiculous British adult humour. It is a YA book, so a bit more romance, of a different type, like cutesy romance. There is some romance in Thursday Next, and then a bit less of the ridiculous British humour, but still very well done. I will say that unfortunately I did think the ending wrapped up too quickly. Again, we didn't get enough character development. You know what, this and Gallant, don't ask anywhere near enough questions about their dads. Nowhere near enough. Ask about your fathers. But apart from that, a really gorgeous book, and I definitely want to read more from Glaser because I really enjoyed this. She has another book, The Forgotten Book, that is also literary inspired, and I want to read that. And then the final book of this month was my Goldsborough GSFF box book, which is The Embroidered Book by Kate Hartfield. This is a historical fantasy set from a lot of time periods. Where does it start? 1786. Is when it starts, following two sisters, Mary Antoinette and Charlotte, her older sister. It starts from when they are young children living in Austria, and growing up together they were always close, genuinely, the actual women were very close. And then Charlotte, because her older sister passes away, is then sent off to do a marriage in Naples, which was intended for her older sister, and the marriage in France to the Dauphin, which was intended for Charlotte, is given to Marie Antoinette. This is all factually, historically accurate. Everything that happens in this book that could be considered an actual historical event occurred. It's incredibly well researched, so well done, like everything is completely accurate. The research I did afterwards to learn more just confirmed that everything in this book was accurate, even from the interpersonal relationships that we see built up with magical aspects in them. Obviously, that is not in the historical archives, but everything else is. And the magic is fantastic, it's so cool. So the magic system in this is that you have to sacrifice things from yourself, and so you have to like write down a hope, and that hope will be taken from you. So if you really wanted to get married, you no longer care. A love, you can put down a love that you have for your best friend or your brother or your dog, and suddenly you'll look at them and you'll be like, yeah, I know I used to love them and they're fine, but I don't love them anymore. But you can then use that to enchant things. During this time there was a lot of famine, Mary Antoinette, so it's utilised to try and duplicate food and things like that. It is done absolutely fascinatingly. I adored the political side of this, and seeing these two women delve in very different aspects to the political lives of their countries. And I'm now thinking that if Charlotte had actually went to France, I do not think the French Revolution would have happened, because that woman had control. Unlike Marie Antoinette, who wasn't trained for this, she wasn't trained for that role, she was the little girl, it hadn't been decided for her yet, so she was just, you know, flouncing around, being all happy and cute. She didn't have to think about politics, whereas Charlotte was raised for this position. So yeah, very, very interesting, very, very good. Never would have picked it up if the book box hadn't put it in my hands, and I'm so glad that it did, because I really enjoyed it. It's a chunky book, like, it is 650 plus pages of historical fantasy. But it's really good, it's really, really good. I highly recommend picking this book up. If you can get this gorgeous edition from Goldsborough, then like, go for it. But at the same time, it's also just really lovely to read. So I'm very glad that this one was forced upon me. Oh, and before I forget, not that anyone but me cares, but this is my channel, I also read 2 Geo magazines, one little fellowship guide, and a Nature's Home magazine, because I've been trying to get through these. Yay! And those are the books that I read last month. I will go through the stats a little bit, just so that you know where we're at, in case I do actually fucking track my books next month. So I started off with 118 books on my TBR. I read 10 books from my TBR that weren't rereads or weren't brand new in read straight away, and I got 12 new books. I'm not going to go through them this time. I do a quarterly haul. My first quarter haul will be coming out really soon if it's not out already, so they'll be just mentioned in my quarterly haul or on my Instagram if you want to see. But yeah, so I got 12 books in this month, meaning that I ended up with 120 books on my TBR. It went up too, considering I decided that this month didn't count, that could have been a lot worse. And then I ended up reading 4,887 pages this month. which I don't think is half bad. Please folks, let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, or if you're going to read any of them, if I've persuaded you to pick up any, such as, you can't see it, but the embroidered book, the book jumper, Brothers Lionheart, like, let me know. There's some amazing books. And also, I can't believe that we're done with Skulduggery. The Dead Famous Read-Along is done. We had our last live show at the very end of last month. I can't believe it's done. If you'd like to see some more from me, if you'd like to see what I'm going to read next month, will I put that up first? Maybe. This month, it's been a while since I filmed, man. But if you want to see some more from me, I am going to be back on track from this point on, so hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye!